This is Jody Tropiano, the Content Director for Health, and I'm here with Richard Saynor, the CEO of Sandoz Pharmaceuticals. Richard, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
So we're going to chat a little bit about the last several months and then also look at the future a bit about what you're up to at Sandoz.
Okay,
So
fantastic.
first, we'd just love to know kind of how you at Sandoz as a whole responded to the pandemic, how you communicated with employees internally, and then also with your patients externally.
No, it's great. Thank you for the question. I mean, it's been quite a remarkable and dramatic few months. I mean, first and foremost, clearly, first priority is making sure our associates were safe, able to work from home, wherever practically possible. Clearly, we had some associates in factories and the labs that still needed to come in, and we'll talk about them in a moment. But clearly, number one priority, making sure they were safe. And then number two priority really is making sure that we had a supply chain that could respond to the challenges and deliver product ultimately to patients and hospitals that need our drugs. So really it's been a combination of those two things. I think we've been fortunate that we've been able to adapt to sort of a lot of digital working over the last few months. So pretty much the day-to-day of running the business and connecting with the various teams in some ways has been a lot easier using the digital platforms, and then where we've needed to, then we've continued in that vein.
And how have you been able to ensure access to a reliable medicine supply for patients during this time?
I think we'd started planning pretty much early, right at the beginning of the year, in terms of trying to understand where we had raw materials, and when we make over 1,000 products, over 1,000 molecules, so it's a very complex supply chain. But we were fortunate that we made sure we had sufficient inventory, and then we were planning in process. So actually, I've been really proud of how the organization has been able to respond to, in some cases, truly unprecedented demand for critical care meds, anti-infectives, and along the way, we've also, donated medicines and ICU kits. So it's been quite remarkable, but I'm very pleased that actually, by and large, we've had very few stockouts or sort of major supply issues.
That's great. And digging into the supply chain a little bit more, how have you had to adapt very quickly, and maybe have there been any surprises along the way that you were even shocked about?
I don't think anything really surprised us. I mean, I think the first thing we made was a commitment around pricing. We said, look, as globally, we didn't want to use this as an opportunity to take price or increase the cost of our products to patients at what is clearly a very worrying and troubling time. So first of all, we made a very clear price commitment particularly around our essential medicines, that we wouldn't increase price. I mean, clearly we've seen unusual buying patterns. I think probably the HCQ donation was quite dramatic, and obviously we supplied quite significant quantities of HCQ. But outside that, we've tried to be able to match the demand patterns that we've seen. I mean, I guess most of the products you would expect, particularly critical care meds, anti-infectives, analgesics, have all gone up in demand, and we've been able to respond to it.
That's wonderful. And with your digital capabilities, you mentioned that a bit earlier. How have you further enhanced those digital capabilities, and do you plan to do any further enhancements in the near future?
I think it's been a journey. I think first and foremost, using digital to connect as an organization and teams. The platforms have worked extremely well and been very robust. It's allowed us to really continue working pretty much unchanged. I think what the biggest area of direct change is ultimately how we've engaged with physicians and our customers. Because clearly we can no longer physically visit customers in hospitals or pharmacies, etc. So we've had to do that through digital platforms. We've started doing webinars. We've done quite a series on COVID related, and that's been extremely well received by a lot of physicians, particularly in Europe. So that's been probably the biggest area of change, is how we support our commercial organizations to allow them to continue to talk to customers and bring that forward. So I think that will continue certainly going forward, and I think that will bring new ways that we can connect and build relationships.
Excellent. And so kind of looking back a little bit, before the pandemic hit, what was Sandoz's approach to innovation, and has that changed at all?
I think the approach, the direction was the same. I think what this has just done is really accelerated that. I mean, it's put everybody in the same position at the same time. So it's, in some ways, the positive out of this, it's an opportunity to really look at how we want to connect as an organization, how we work as teams, and ultimately how we connect with our customers and our patients. So that direction was already in play, but I really think this is an opportunity to accelerate that and really use the change to make the most of a much more digital and integrated way of working.
Mm-hmm. And there's been, countless articles about how COVID-19 really changed the pharmaceutical industry and pushed them forward, light years in this short amount of time. But on the other side of this, where do you think the biggest challenges will be for the pharma industry? And maybe if you can just point out a couple ways where you think the pharma industry was maybe changed for the better because of this.
I think generally, I think the industry's responded extremely positively and extremely well over the last few months, both in terms of supply and how it's stepped up, both from an innovative science point of view. I mean, now 185 different vaccine candidates being developed. And I've never seen such, focus across the entire industry, and also collaboration across the industry. So, this is a very competitive industry, but I think as competitors have really sort of put away the focus on that side and really trying to focus on, okay, how do we really solve this problem? Because it's something that clearly affects all of us and affects sectors globally. So I think that's a real positive change. I think the dialogue around pricing, quality, availability, resilience of supply is also really becoming to the fore, which again, ultimately I think is to the benefit of patients. So there's a number of areas, whether it's in the innovative end of the spectrum or in the generics end of the spectrum.
I like that. The collaboration part, that's key. And you mentioned the vaccines and treatments. So we've seen, yes, a countless amount of vaccines in production right now, all different kinds, in new ways that we've never seen before. Do you think this has fundamentally changed the way that we develop vaccines?
I'm probably not the best person qualified to answer that, but I mean, certainly I've never seen it's an unprecedented level of energy being put into that. So, it's clearly a difficult area of research, but in terms of the speed, quantity of approaches is unparalleled. So I think there'll be a lot learned from this about, how we can develop products quickly and bring them to the market and really to the benefit of patients. So I would hope so, yes.
Damn. And you mentioned collaboration, so kind of touching back on that. Have you collaborated with your partners, either other partners within the health ecosystem or other pharmaceutical companies in new ways during the last several months?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we collaborate a lot with governments and payers. We're having levels of dialogue with governments, particularly that we've never really had about, okay, how do we understand the needs in terms of security of supply, and the whole end-to-end supply chain, which I think is a real positive. Right. Certainly in terms of some of the critical meds, there's been a lot of cross-industry collaboration trying to understand, availability of raw drug substance and how we can connect the dots to make sure that we understand where that is, and then make sure that ultimately it's about the supply to the patient rather than necessarily who's competing with whom. So I think that's a real positive as well. So I think there's been a lot of focus ultimately on just getting products to hospitals and to patients, which is really how it should be.
Yep. And have you had to work with your sister company, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but Novartis in new ways? I know they've been, historically very innovative. So how have you guys collaborated?
Yeah, there's been a strong collaboration. I also sit on the executive committee of Novartis anyway. So in a sense, I'm also involved day to day on the Novartis side of the business, not just Sandoz, but there's been a lot of collaboration in terms of the science side, understanding how we build studies to support and the understanding of the right treatment protocols. So there's numerous activities across the whole organization, from the innovative side right through the generic side, but also all of that gets coordinated to make sure it's done in the right way, and we bring the maximum amount of benefit and impact.
Great. So focusing less on the science and the supply chain, but more about leadership. And you sit as the leader of your organization, and you've had to kind of steer your employees during this tough time and maybe revamp your decision-making process. So what does that look like? And how would you give advice to other leaders out there who are maybe confused of how to navigate these uncertain waters?
That's, again, a good question. I mean, I think what we've tried to do, or the opportunity I've had is to talk to people all over the world in perhaps a way that I wouldn't have done in the past. I mean, I've been on ride-alongs with sales team, digital ride-alongs with sales teams from the US to China to Japan and Europe. I've talked to associates all over the world, and I'm just really trying to take time to connect regularly. So as a leadership team, we've started to connect much more regularly, at least once a week and twice a week right at the beginning of the crisis. And I think that's helped sort of focus on what's the priorities in terms of the agenda. We've done regular town halls, both with the senior leaders in the organizations, so the top 200 leaders, just giving them an opportunity to raise questions and use open forum platforms like Pigeonhole that allows them to ask questions. And then regular global town halls that really, again, talk about the issues and really give people the opportunity to ask the questions that they want to ask, whether they want, anonymously or publicly, but really just talking. I think that's probably been the most positive thing out of this, that I've ended up spending a lot more time just talking to every level of the organization. And also, in a sense, it's been very humanizing. We're all in the same boat, whether you're the CEO or in a factory in Austria or whatever. Everybody is in the same position. Everyone has the same concerns. They're worried about their family and their health, their well-being. And I think that's really brought everybody together around a very clear sense of purpose. I think, Sandoz has, it's a unique position. We treat more patients in Europe than any other pharmaceutical company. We're one of the largest generic companies in the US. We have a real sense of purpose linked to what's currently going on. And I think that's been very empowering for our associates. So for me, it's about connecting to as many people as I can and constantly talking about that purpose and the value that we bring as a company to patients. And I think that's resonated extremely well.
Excellent. That's well said. And so you mentioned you're global. Obviously, we know that you have campuses all over the globe, all kind of facing different challenges right now. So what does opening up a global campus look like for you?
So I guess in one word, slowly. So we've started now. I mean, the campuses are slowly opening up, but we're still encouraging most of our associates to work from home wherever possible. And that they've been fantastic and collaborating to do that. We want to try and keep the numbers in any particular campus or office to a lower level, just to stop potential further infections, particularly in this critical phase. So I think that will continue for quite a few months now going forward, that actually most of our interactions will be done digitally still. And, going into the office actually will be the exception rather than the norm. So we'll continue to encourage that and encourage people to work in the same way that they have been over the last few months.
Great. Yeah, I know it's been probably a shock of how productive people can be from home, and we're seeing that kind of across the board. So any last thoughts or kind of words of encouragement for the future and something you're particularly excited about looking forward?
I think looking forward, I mean, the positive out of all of this I think has been the connectivity that we've had as an organization linked to that purpose. I think clearly digital, and I think digital for me is quite broad, but how we work and how we connect with our customers will never be quite the same again. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think ultimately how we understand our supply chain, understand the relationships with payers and patients, and how we bring more products to the marketplace that opens up healthcare, that really is going to be our focus continue as we go forward. And I think, we've shown that we can operate in a very digitized, connected way. I really want to keep the best of what we've seen over the last few months and adapt that and not necessarily go back to the old ways. So I think there's some real positives coming out of all these challenges. And really, my job is to seize those, set that agenda, and then work with our teams to make sure we stick to it.
That's great. Yep. Looking forward, I think there's definitely a bright future that can come out of all of this.
Absolutely.
Well, it's been wonderful speaking with you. Appreciate you taking the time and all that you do.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the questions.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this interview. We're doing our best to keep our health community up to date and informed as the pandemic progresses. So please check back for more interviews and blog pieces with leading health experts, as well as check out our Health COVID resource page for more information.